The biting December wind tore through the streets of San Francisco with relentless force, howling like a wild beast and cutting through Tom Wilson's thin, tattered jacket as though it were made of paper. At 73, Tom had weathered many storms, both literal and metaphorical, but this bitter cold seemed more biting than ever. 5 long years had passed since he first found himself on the streets. 5 years of sleepless nights and cold, hungry days. It had all started after his wife, Martha, was diagnosed with cancer. Her treatments drained their savings, and when she passed, Tom lost not just the love of his life, but everything they had worked for. The medical bills consumed their home, their security, and eventually left Tom with nothing but the clothes on his back and the memories of a life he could hardly recognize anymore. Still, Tom endured, surviving day by day, always clinging to the hope that things could somehow get better. His usual spot was near Tesla headquarters, a towering glass building that seemed to belong to another world. The contrast between his threadbare existence and the polished, fast-paced tech world around him was stark. Tom sat with his cardboard sign, its edges worn and frayed, that simply read, "Veteran. Any help appreciated." He wasn't one to ask for much, but that sign spoke volumes about his quiet desperation. Most of the time, the well-dressed employees from the tech company hurried past, absorbed in their own lives, barely sparing him a glance. Their phones and earbuds seemed like barriers that kept the world at bay. Tom didn't resent them for it. He understood. The world moved fast, and he had learned long ago that being homeless often made you invisible. He had accepted it, or at least tried to. Invisibility was part of survival. That morning had begun like any other. The streets were just waking up. The early commuters rushing by in a blur of coats and briefcases. Tom was in the middle of rearranging his few belongings in the shopping cart he used as a mobile home when something unusual caught his eye. A sleek, black car, a model he immediately recognized as one of Tesla's finest, was pulled off to the side of the road, steam rising from its hood in angry, swirling plumes. The driver, clearly agitated, was pacing next to it, phone in hand, frustration etched into every line of his body. Tom squinted through the haze, trying to make out the figure. When he saw the man's face, he did a double take. Even though he had been out of the mainstream world for years, Tom knew who this was. Elon Musk. The name itself was enough to conjure images of space rockets, electric cars, and impossible dreams made real. Tom had seen the man's face plastered across magazines and news segments, even from the small television sets displayed in shop windows. Musk was a symbol of success, innovation, and wealth beyond anything Tom could imagine. Yet here he was, pacing next to a car that seemed to be mocking him with its breakdown. For a moment, Tom hesitated. He wasn't in the habit of approaching people, especially someone as famous and well-off as Musk. But then again, Tom had always been a mechanic at heart, and the sight of a broken-down vehicle stirred something deep within him. It reminded him of the days when he still had a purpose, when his hands were strong and steady, fixing engines in the sweltering heat of Vietnam. He took a deep breath, willing his stiff joints to cooperate, and shuffled over toward the car. "Excuse me, sir," he said quietly, his voice rasping from years of disuse. "I couldn't help but notice you're having some car trouble. I used to be a mechanic in the army. Maybe I could take a look." Elon Musk turned around, and for a split second, Tom saw the familiar look of hesitation. The same look people gave him whenever they realized he was homeless, a mixture of distrust and discomfort. But then something in Tom's weathered, gentle demeanor must have struck a chord, because Musk's expression softened. That would actually be really helpful, Elon said, sounding surprised but grateful. I've got an important meeting, and my phone isn't getting any signal out here. Tom nodded, his mind already focusing on the task at hand. He carefully set his cart aside and approached the vehicle. Lifting the hood, the smell of engine oil and metal filled his senses. It was like stepping back into the past, into a time when his hands were his livelihood. Though his fingers were stiff with arthritis now, they still remembered their way around an engine. The diagnosis was quick. The cooling system had a leak. It wasn't a catastrophic failure, but it would be enough to prevent Musk from getting where he needed to go. I can patch it up enough to get you to your meeting, Tom said, his voice more confident now. It won't last forever, but it'll hold for a while. Elon watched curiously as Tom rummaged through his cart, pulling out a few old tools, component, placement some water, and a piece of rubber he had been saving for emergencies. With quiet precision, Tom went to work. His hands, though shaky with age, moved with the same skill and care they had in his younger days. 20 minutes later, the temporary fix was complete. "Give it a try," Tom called out, wiping his hands on his pants. Elon slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and the engine roared back to life smoothly. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "That's incredible," he said, glancing at his watch. "You just saved me from missing a crucial meeting. How much do I owe you?" Tom shook his head, his weathered face breaking into a small smile. "Nothing, sir. I'm just happy to help. My daddy always said, helping others is its own reward." Elon paused, looking at Tom more closely now. He seemed to take in everything, the ragged clothes, the shopping cart, the quiet dignity in Tom's eyes. "At least let me give you something for your trouble," Elon insisted, reaching for his wallet. Tom held up a hand, gently refusing. "It's really fine. I'm just glad I could be useful again." As Tom started to turn away, Elon called out, "Wait, what's your name?" "Tom Wilson, sir." "Well, Tom Wilson," Elon said, the hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I don't believe in coincidences. Would you tell me your story?" Tom hesitated for a moment, but there was something sincere in Elon's voice that made him open up. In a few short sentences, Tom shared the story of his life, his time in Vietnam, his years as a mechanic, his beloved wife Martha, and her battle with cancer. He spoke without bitterness, just stating the facts, as though recounting events from another lifetime. "These things happen," he said, with a resigned shrug. "Can't change the past." Elon Musk listened intently, his expression growing more serious with every word. When Tom finished, Musk reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek business card. "Tom, I've got to get to this meeting, but I want you to go to this address tomorrow morning. Ask for Sarah in HR. Will you do that for me?" Tom looked down at the card, stunned. I don't want charity, sir." "This isn't charity," Elon replied firmly. "It's an opportunity, one you've earned. Will you come?" Tom looked back at the card, his heart racing. "Yes, sir," he whispered. "I'll be there." That night, Tom could hardly sleep. The wind howled through the streets, but his mind was elsewhere, racing with thoughts of what the next day might bring. He kept checking the business card in his pocket to make sure it was real. Could this really be happening? He had spent years trying to hold on to the belief that life could turn around. And now, for the first time in a long while, it felt like it just might. When morning came, Tom used the last of his quarters to wash up in a public restroom, doing his best to make himself presentable. His reflection in the cracked mirror was that of an old man, but for the first time in years, there was a spark of hope in his eyes. He put on the least worn of his clothes and made his way to the Tesla headquarters. As he stood at the gleaming reception desk, surrounded by the hustle and bustle of tech workers, Tom felt completely out of place. But before he could dwell on it, he was greeted by a woman with a warm smile. "Mr. Wilson, we've been expecting you," she said, introducing herself as Sarah from Human Resources. "Mr. Musk spoke to me about you yesterday. We have a proposition for you." Tom's heart pounded as Sarah led him into a bright office and explained what they had in mind. Tesla wanted to offer him a position as a senior maintenance advisor for their classic vehicle division. His decades of mechanical experience would be invaluable in helping them design electric vehicles that were easier for everyday mechanics to repair. "We'll also provide temporary housing while you get back on your feet," she added, "and your medical benefits will start immediately." Tom blinked, struggling to comprehend what he was hearing. "Ma'am, I'm 73 years old. Most folks think I'm too old to work." Sarah's smile widened. "Mr. Musk believes that wisdom and experience have no expiration date, and your integrity impressed him. You helped him without expecting anything in return. That's the kind of person we want on our team." Tears welled up in Tom's eyes, his throat tightening with emotion. He thought of Martha, her quiet faith in the goodness of the world, and how she always believed that everything happened for a reason. Maybe she was right, Tom whispered to himself. Later that afternoon, Tom moved into a small but comfortable studio apartment that Tesla had arranged for him. As he placed his few belongings on the table, he noticed an envelope waiting for him. Inside was a note from Elon Musk. "Tom, your kindness helped me when you had every reason to turn your back on the world. Consider this a small repayment." Beneath the note was a check that would cover every last one of Martha's medical bills. Tom sank to his knees, the weight of years of hardship finally lifting from his shoulders. For the first time in a long time, he cried. Tears of relief, gratitude, and hope for the future. The next morning, Tom Wilson walked into Tesla headquarters, wearing a brand new uniform and carrying a heart full of hope. As he passed the spot where he had once sat with his cardboard sign, he whispered a quiet thank you to Martha, feeling her presence beside him. Her belief in kindness had carried him through the darkest of times, and now, as he stepped into this new chapter of his life, Tom knew that she had been right all along. Kindness always finds its way back.